every time. This is my 2024 Z06, and it is special. So I've owned a lot of cars. I have owned a lot of cars. Most of them performance-based, a handful of luxury, a few exotics. And I gotta say, this thing is special. It really is. So the way that I ended up with this wasn't planned. I've never been a big Corvette enthusiast or what have you. I've always had appreciation for cars. All makes and models have their special place in my heart, but I was never someone that was just, from the beginning, Corvettes were my life. I've always had a little bit more gravitas towards the Italians, unfortunately. But I don't think that's uncommon. Nonetheless, my boss, who is fabulously wealthy and goes through more cars and nicer cars than I've ever had the opportunity to so far, he traded in his STO for a Z06. And again, this guy's gone through a lot of really high-end hypercars and exotics. And he knew that I was on the market to buy something else, and I was looking at a different Italian. He told me, he's like, buy a Z06. Obviously, we know it's a much more cost-effective vehicle to purchase. And he's like, it'll change your perception on cars and what's good. That was a little bit kind of hard to swallow, but again, guy's owned a lot of cars. He's owned a lot of beautiful machines that I would like to get my hands on one day. So I said, all right, you know, I was gonna spend the cash anyway. I figured, what the heck, and I went and I did it. So I bought this thing sight unseen. Took a little bit of time for it to show up because of the supply chain issues. I actually ordered the Z07 pack with all the bells and whistles, but a lot of the carbon fiber, the splitter, the wing, and the canards were back ordered. So they gave me an option to remove that, but I got everything else. Carbon ceramic brakes, exposed carbon wheels, every option that this thing could have, minus the front splitter and rear spoiler. Anyway, I order the car, it shows up. Obviously it's absolutely beautiful, which we'll talk about later. But when he said it was special, I get it now. So obviously, aside from being wider than the standard C8 and having a different power plant with the flat plane V8, and yes, I know what a flat plane is. I don't just say that because it sounds cool and I want to try and distinguish the car. I know what a flat plane is. Yes, it does not make the torque that most American cars are known for, and that's a little bit unfortunate. But the pull at higher RPM, and as cliche as it sounds, the note that the engine and the exhaust make are absolutely intoxicating. But more importantly, from a performance perspective, it's just perfect. The throttle response is great, the suspension is great, the steering is sharp. Everything does exactly what you want it to, when you need it to. It reoriented my mind on what I thought an exotic should be. And I know this might not be considered an exotic because however you look at it, is it price point? Is it performance based? Is it rarity? Whatever. Comparing this to the Huracans and the GT3s, obviously comparing it to the 458 and the 488, which is what the engine was derived off of, completely fair comparisons, and this thing hangs in there, and obviously it does it at a fraction of at the price. So it's hard for me, as someone who was getting ready to buy my next car, that was looking at one of the Italian brands, which you guys will help me get there later. It's really hard to see how it gets better. What I can imagine is obviously build quality is going to be a little bit different, but I gotta say, I had a standard C8 before, and it definitely had that GM feel to it. A lot of plastic, not a lot of high-end materials, but it performed great, it sounded great, it was a beautiful car. You know, it was fine. And at the price point, it was a bargain. I will stay for the Z06 fully loaded out as I have it. I am kind of impressed with the quality of the vehicle. Everything is soft, whether it is full leather or it's soft, kind of leather infused or plastic infused hard panels, so that everything has a nice soft textile feel to it. They even kind of went with Alcantara on the top and a little bit of a knockoff on the pillars. The inside is all carbon fiber and aluminum. So from a trim perspective, I'm actually kind of blown away that this is still the same Corvette. They really invested in this thing and made it compete. But that being said, I know there's going to be, God, I love this thing. I know there's going to be some build quality, some nicer materials and stuff like that, which I absolutely am willing to pay for. I'm very big on interior, not only quality of build, but materials. I tend to favor material over solidness or robustness of how a car is built. So that'll be there. The exterior build quality, the panel gaps and stuff like that. But then obviously you get into the service and lower production volumes and all the unreliability issues that come with it. And a big part of the price is the brand prestige. But from a pure driving perspective, a sound perspective, a kind of visceral experience, this has reoriented my head on what I think I want in my next vehicle. I don't know if that's good or bad, but he was absolutely right. It's good that I bought this before I bought what I was considering getting, because now I need to reconsider my priorities and who I want to be when I grow up. All of that stuff being said, don't get me wrong. I have to dig a little deep and be a little bit petty, but I can find things that I'm not a big fan of for this car. And again, I'm digging deep to be petty. The first thing is, I paid extra for the upgraded sound system. That was a mistake. One, you can't hear anything when you're in track mode or even sport mode and you're driving with a little bit of intent. You're not listening to that music much anyway, because all you get is the sound of that flat plane V8 just screaming and begging to be unleashed. It does not care what you're listening to. The soundtrack for whatever you're playing through your phone has no bearing in the experience, and it's very hard to hear anyway unless you really crank it up. And if you do, you're getting your music muffled in with that exhaust note. That was a waste of money. Probably don't even need a speaker system in here outside of if you have to make a phone call and if for some reason you drive this thing in touring mode over long distances. I will say, while I've never done that, I have considered taking this thing cross country a little bit. And when you're getting into some of those highways, putting it in touring and just kind of cruising and being, that could make sense to me. Having the music at that time would probably be, you know, a really good deal. But for my use on this car, for how few miles I have on it, and it being a more of a toy, more of an occasional use, 99 times out of 100 when I start this thing, it goes into track mode. I'm on the manual pedals and I'm driving with vigor and intent. So the sound system is something that I found was a little bit weird. There is one thing that I have a criticism on this car for, and it's highly personal. What one person thinks is beautiful be something totally different for another individual. From the side, this is one of the most beautiful cars I've ever seen. It absolutely stole my heart with its body styling, its very clear Italian inspiration. It is absolutely sexy. I could look at this thing from the side all day. That being said, the 3/4 view on this vehicle, the straight-on view from this vehicle, they don't work for me. And I know that sounds really strange, but the lines and the styling they put on this vehicle are beautiful. But for some reason, the rear deck on this car is so flat. It is a hard, almost 60-degree bend between the rear quarter and the top of the deck lid, to where when you look at this thing straight on, it almost has an El Camino vibe. It looks like there's a truck bed in the back because it's so wide and it's dead flat. It doesn't seem to fit the rest of the aesthetic for the car. It's only from a couple of views that you notice that. For the most part, when this thing's driving by or I glance at it, it's always beautiful. The other thing on the aesthetic side that I do find interesting is the back. Again, from the front, the side, this thing screams Italian inspiration. When you go to the back, that theme ends. You look at this and the side profile is very sleek, very angular, very aggressive. And then from the back view, there's no doubt this is a Vette. It's got that kind of classic styling in the back. It's a lot harsher lines. I do like that the taillights are actually a little bit concave, which is a really cool feature. But that back end doesn't match the rest of the style of the car in my mind. So when you see it from the front and the side, you're like, wow, what is that? It's beautiful. You see it from the back and it's like, it's a very distinct rear profile. It's very clearly a Vette. And again, I think it's a little bit more aggressive with the angles and with the design, and it's a little bit different than how they approach the rest of the car. So those are really the only things that I have to throw a gripe about. Is I think the back deck lid is a little bit too flat, and the angle from the quarter to the top is overly aggressive, and I think the rear bumper is a little bit of a different styling theme than the rest of the vehicle. Other than that, I got nothing against this car. It's absolutely amazing. God, does it sound good. That will never get old. I really do love this thing. It's been such an experience to drive. It's altered my expectations in a car. I am struggling now on where to go after this. Part of me wants to keep it forever. I can see why Corvette enthusiasts are kind of torn with this car. This is kind of a break from what they normally would go after. When I try and think of Corvette, I think of them as the manifestation of hold my beer. You've got all of these big brand name companies that make some incredibly high performance cars, and they cost an absolute fortune. And the Corvette brand has always been there to show that the American automaker, the engineering, mass production, those type of things aren't necessarily weaknesses, and they can disrupt. So every notable Corvette that's ever come out has targeted the top performing vehicles in that era. Up until recently, when you look at like the C7 style, they were just going after power and performance, and they were doing it the American way. But with the C8 version, especially this Z06, they wanted to make a point that they could use the European platform better than anyone else. So they created their own flat plane V8. They did a mid-mounted engine, and they did it better than the people who have started in this space. And that disrupts a lot of people because, again, you think of the Mustangs, you think of the history of Corvette, and they've always been more of the naturally aspirated or even supercharged, big torque, high output, wonderful performance, Nürburgring setting lap time cars. And while this thing still is, they just did it stealing the European model, and they did it better. So to me, it holds true to what Corvette is, which is we're going to disrupt. We're going to show that we can do what everyone else does just as good, most of the time do it better, and having it done at a half the price or, 70% of what it would cost to get something comparable to this level of performance. So in that aspect, I think it holds true to Corvette. Corvette to me is disruption and change in proving that you can get that level of performance and beauty without having to make these things cost $500,000. So from that aspect, I think this holds true to the Corvette and the Z06 brand. The way that they did it definitely does break away from how they've gone after it in the past. Is this the future of the brand? I don't know. Like I said, I'm an admirer of all cars. I've always loved Corvettes. I've never been an enthusiast. Technically, because this car came out, I became a fan of Corvette, and I actually have bought a couple. I wanted to be the first to own a mid-engine Vette, so that's why I bought the original C8. And then this thing came out, and like I said, my boss told me to get it because it would change my perspective on what high-performance car is, and I got it, and he's absolutely right. This thing is special, and it did its job. It disrupted. So I'm in love with it. I think they hit the mark. Again, a couple aesthetic things that I would change, but for the most part, this is just a bad machine. Yeah, it's gorgeous. Let's get back in it. As always, I appreciate you guys coming along for the ride. Look forward to your feedback. Thank you so much. Later.
tears 1,000 times. We rise against, we'll